Rian White, the young mother, stabbed in the head 20 times by an illegal migrant from Sudan.
At 9:14 p.m, Rhiannon Skye White, a 27-year-old shift worker earning minimum wage, was stabbed 23 times inside the hotel where she worked. Within hours, Walsall was ablaze. Within a day, 56 migrant hotels were in flames. Within a night, 150,000 protesters had descended on the country. This is no longer news. This is Britain's tipping point. Why did a single crime spark the biggest riots in the West Midlands in a generation? Why is Westminster silent while the whole region explodes? And how did a live stream turn one town's grief into a national reckoning? Follow along. What you're about to see is the truth behind the night Britain lost control. At 9:14 p.m. on November 7th, 2025, Walsall, West Midlands, crossed a line of no return. Inside the Redbridge Inn, 27-year-old Rhiannon Skye White began her evening shift. 20 minutes later, she lay in a narrow service corridor, stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver. The suspect, Deng Chol Majek, a Sudanese refugee who was staying at the same hotel. The shock lasted only seconds before the fury exploded. By 9:41 p.m, the fire had spread to the hotel's fade, painting the sky a fiery orange. Within the first hour, the death toll had soared. 250 people were injured. 26 police officers were hospitalised. 56 migrant hotels burned. 128 arrests across the region. The moment the nation felt the rift was when Rhiannon's colleague, Chloe Bennett, pointed her shaky phone at the burning hotel and whispered through the smoke, "She was just doing her job. Why did she have to die?" Her live stream had been viewed 4.8 million times by midnight, transforming Walsall from a quiet Midlands town into the centre of a national event. That night, the Union Jack didn't glow with pride. It was in flames, and in the rising smoke, Britain understood one thing: this tragedy would not end in silence. By dawn, grief had turned to rage. Walsall was no longer a crime scene. It was a symbol of a broken promise. The government had assured people that migrant hotels were safe havens. Rhiannon's death proved otherwise. People gathered outside the charred entrance of the Redbridge Inn, not with slogans but with accusations, their voices cut through the morning chill. Security is not about papers, it's about lives. Who protected her? Crowds poured into Walsall from Dudley, Wolverhampton, Birmingham and Tipton, turning roundabouts into rallying points. The rage was fierce, unanimous and uncompromising. At its centre stood Tom Acker, the 52-year-old taxi driver who had tried to save Rhiannon minutes after the attack, with ash still clinging to his jacket. He faced a circle of cameras and uttered the words that went viral on social media. "In all my years on these streets, I have never seen this country shaken until now." What burned down that morning was more than a hotel. It was trust. Trust in bodies that approved contracts without oversight, warned without action, took risks without accountability. Walsall had spoken and his message was unmistakable. They would no longer accept silence for safety. By early afternoon, Walsall's fury was unchecked. It started as a localised outburst, but then spread like a shockwave. The chant that started on Park Street, "She died in silence, we will not," had spread across the country before police could redraw the lines. In Belfast, hundreds of people surrounded migrant housing estates within minutes of the first rally. In Derry, Lisbon and Antrim, busloads of people poured into city squares, creating crowds too large for local units to disperse. By 4 p.m, London and Newcastle had joined in, bringing the total number of protesters as nationwide to more than 150,000. Video from Belfast showed riot shields buckling under the weight. In London, protesters streamed across Westminster Bridge, shouting the words Chloe Bennett had uttered in her live stream, words now seared into the minds of the nation. Meanwhile, Chloe's second live stream, filmed from behind police tape in Walsall, had been viewed more than 6 million times in just 4 hours. Each share was accompanied by a single caption: "Walsall is not alone." Hotels once marketed as safe havens became hotspots. Police lines tensed. Sirens joined the chants. Across Britain, one truth was clear as mist. This was no longer a response to a tragedy, but a long-delayed, now unstoppable reckoning. By nightfall, Britain's security apparatus had collapsed. Police commanders from Birmingham to Belfast were repeating the same message over encrypted channels. Units of stretch reinforcements needed. The response was cold, identical and useless. No resources, hold position. In Walsall, stun grenades exploded across Park Street as police tried, unsuccessfully, to stop an attack on a council office in Belfast. 2 riot vehicles overturned within minutes. At 7:46 p.m, the West Midlands Control Centre recorded an unprecedented alert. A police drone was jammed mid-flight. A leaked My5 report appeared online, warning of 42 encrypted channels coordinating crowd movements with military precision. The final line was more shocking than any headline. Containment is no longer feasible. Minutes later, a substation in central Walsall caught fire, plunging buildings into darkness. Ambulance routes out of Wolverhampton were blocked. Fire crews in Dudley were forced to retreat as clashes broke out around a burning migrant hotel. Inside Westminster, an emergency meeting lasted well past midnight. A senior aide later revealed that the Prime Minister stood transfixed in front of a wall of flashing red lights. Walsall, Belfast, London, each glowing like a gaping crack. Outside, the government called it controlled unrest. But on the streets, nothing was controlled. By the next morning, a devastating blow had been dealt to the UK economy. Preliminary estimates put the total loss at £79 million, of which £52 million was lost. Retail sales lost £1.6 billion in 8%, exceeding the biggest falls in Birmingham and Liverpool, with supply lines likely to be paralysed for 2 days. Hospitals in the West Midlands began using backup generators due to disruptions in fuel supplies. In Walsall, Manor Hospital treated dozens of protest-related injuries while struggling with power outages due to equipment shortages. Meanwhile, the core spirit of the movement grew stronger. Chloe Benn, SA 14 mil, becoming Britain used to export across markets, streets and screens. One conclusion was inevitable. It is a nation disruption. As dawn broke over the West Midlands, the fires began to die down, but not the people. Streets that had once been filled with conflict were now filled with volunteers sweeping up trash, passing buckets of ashes. Strangers who had stood on opposite sides of the conflict hours earlier now stood side by side, united not by politics but by exhaustion and the desire to reclaim their town. At the ruins of the Redbridge Inn, Tom Acker laid a small bouquet of flowers where Rhiannon had taken her last steps. A few feet away, Chloe Bennett held up her phone to live stream one last time, not to record the chaos but to steady her voice as she said, "Keep your humanity. It's the one thing the fire can't burn." In nearby churches, candles were lit for everyone, local families, migrants, police, victims, passers-by. Each fire burned, small but persistent, a quiet reminder that even in the midst of brokenness, people still knew how to care for each other. On a wall near the hotel, someone had spray-painted a quote that went viral on social media, faster than any riot clip. "Compassion is the last line of defence." What happened in Walsall was more than just unrest. It was a reckoning. And the question hanging over Britain was simple, inevitable. What kind of... Ultimately, the story of Walsall is more than a single night or a single tragedy. It is a mirror image that Britain has avoided for too long. The flames may have died down. The rubble may have been cleared. But the questions that remain burn brighter than the fires that once haunted the Midlands. Who is protected? Who is ignored? And how long can a nation survive on promises rather than accountability? Across the street, still reeking of smoke, people are rebuilding their country because they no longer trust those on podiums. What emerges from the chaos is not hatred, but a truth too great to be buried. A country breaks when its leaders forget its people. If Britain is to rise from this moment, it will not come through silence or slogans or statements read at dawn, but it will come from courage, compassion, and a public that never wants to be ignored again.